The Switch 2 is able to detect the MIG switch. If you guys aren't familiar with the MIG switch, that's basically the ROM cart that you can dump ROMs onto, put into the cartridge slot, and play Switch games on your Switch. Apparently, according to Switch Tools, a user had used the MIG switch and their Switch 2 got banned immediately. They said, my Switch 2 test has been banned after using the MIG switch with perfectly legal dumps of my own cartridges. So it would seem that Nintendo can detect something similar to reports on Reddit that are starting to come in. And this one is the MIG flash ban from 2 days ago. Hello, everyone. Just want to let everyone know to refrain from using their MIG flash on the Switch 2 online for now. My Switch 2 was just banned. My account is fine for now. Only games I had were by backed up games. Must be some new detection Nintendo has with these MIG switches. Pretty dumb of me to go online with it. That's on me. Edit. My Switch 2 was banned, but my main Nintendo account is not banned. But I wouldn't hold my breath. Just waiting at this point for Nintendo to drop the ban hammer on my account. Pics for proof. So there's that one. And then there's that one. And it comes up with a message saying the use of online services on this console is currently restricted by Nintendo. Matt Stanford says pay $600 just to brick your device. Exactly. And here's the other one. I'm not avoiding this answer. Plus, it will be good for the community to know about this too. I have 2 Nintendo Switch 1s and this now banned NS2. First Switch 1 was a V1 jiggable console. I keep this offline and it's not signed into any account. Second Switch is OLED. I rarely play it online, and I have a MIG switch with my own backups on it. I've been using it for ages, and I've never been banned. Nintendo Switch 2 is completely clean. Never tried to hack it. Wouldn't even know how. The hacking community hasn't released anything. The only thing I can think what has happened is I tried my MIG switch in the Nintendo Switch 2 once. It didn't work. It just showed the game title and refused to load. I tried to download a title update for it, and that was it. Maybe it downloaded a flag for the console to be banned. This was over a week ago. This happened, though. I've been playing with legitimate cartridges ever since, though. FYI for mods, I don't pirate games. I back up my legitimate games, my own cartridges. Piracy is shit. I work in software development. So this is the biggest problem that we're running into with this situation here. Going back to Switch Tools, I strongly recommend that you do not use the MIG switch. It was already very risky to use, but is even more so on the Switch 2. And my issue with all of this is, might be controversial. Nintendo doesn't have the jurisdiction to do this shit. If you buy a product, you should be allowed to play your product the way you want to play it. How is Nintendo to know if you are stealing games, pirating games, or buying games and then dumping those games onto a multi-cart so that you don't need to carry around 500 carts with you? You can just have them all on one cart, which a lot of people do, by the way. Cheeto says, so you spend 500 to test and get banned? Nope, I was offered this console. Unless you can prove you really dumped your own games and still have them, I see no reason to complain here. I'm surprised this guy didn't tag the FBI on this one. Switch Tools replied, Switch Tools, just in case you don't believe me. Yes, I did indeed dump my own personal cartridges, purchased legally. I'm French, and then all the French stuff there, and the MIG switch, and all his games, all listed right there with the note. Literally this. Yeah, exactly. Leave the multi-billion-dollar company alone. Stop dumping your own games and playing them. But I don't understand, and I never have understood, why the ROM laws are very consumer friendly, but these corporations have been screwing people over with them by basically saying, yes, we understand what the law is, but we're going to ignore that and make a terms of conditions or terms of service that you sign up for that overrides your rights as a consumer. I'm like, you can't do that. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. It has always been, as far as I understand, I'm not a lawyer, but as far as I understand, if you own the game legally, you are allowed to play a backup of that game. And these companies legally have nothing on you. They can't do anything to you if you have a legal backup of the game. And I would almost go to so far as to say that might be even more generous to allow people to play other games as well that are outside a certain time frame and stuff like that. I haven't gone that deep into that kind of stuff. But Nintendo themselves, I feel like, is overstepping their bounds and their rights as a company in order to completely bend over the customers and push their agenda even further. Death on a Trekkie says, I'm allowed to stream ROMs if I have a copy of the OG game. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's much of an issue with streaming ROMs. I've never heard of a situation where Nintendo has done anything to anyone ever streaming a ROM. I could be wrong, but I think it's more for they're trying really hard to protect their IP and these big ROM sites from mass sharing to the masses. But at the same time, if you're able to download a ROM of a game that is an identical copy of what you already own, even if you aren't the one that dumped it, if it's identical to what you already own, I don't know how they're able to even tell the difference between it unless there's a signature with your own dump. I don't understand how they're able to even tell. So it gets really into the nitty-gritty, and I think these companies know that there's a massive gray area, so they try to play hot and heavy to scare the crap out of people. But in the grand scheme, it just ends up scaring people away. No one ever takes them to task. Nintendo always seems to find a way to win court cases when they push people with it, and ultimately leaves the consumer with less of a choice and less freedoms and more restrictions on the devices that they're buying. So coming from someone who owns a Switch 2, I, at this point, continue to say, buy a Steam Deck. Although I will also, at the same time, to be fair, because I had the same exact discussion on SNH the other day, if you know you're going to buy a Switch 2 game in the future, then to me, at least, I know it sounds silly to say, but there's no use in waiting. I know I'm going to be buying Metroid Prime 4, and I know I want to play it on the Switch 2. So for me, that was enough to be like, okay, there's one game. I know I'm going to get it. I know I'm going to buy it, and I know I'm going to play it. So that is one of those games. And I know it's very controversial to take this standpoint when we're trying to fight back against these evil, greedy corporations. But Metroid Prime 4, if it debuts at $80, I'm probably going to buy it on day one. But again, like I said earlier, that is very far and few between. Very extremely. Like Grand Theft Auto 6, if that's $80, it's still a day one for me. If it's $100, probably still a day one for me. It probably is. And I know I'm contributing to the shit show of what people are saying stop doing, but at the same time, like, to me, if the game is worth buying and I'm going to get that enjoyment out of it, and I want to present the information to you guys, then to me, it's worth it, personally. And I've said this a million times. If I was not on YouTube and I did not have my YouTube channel, I would not have bought a Switch 2 on launch. To me, it's not worth it currently. But in time, I think it will be. It's just not for the reasons that people think it would be. Does it load faster? Sure. Does this eShop work better? Sure. But the real reason why I love it is because the screen is way bigger and the controller is way bigger, which is what I wanted from day one with the Switch. I just wanted a bigger Switch because my hands are really big. So, I mean, to each their own with it. But I'll leave that there. But yeah, do not use a MIG Switch 2 on your MIG Switch on your Switch 2 because Nintendo is turning your $600 investment into a brick currently. And definitely don't go online with it. Definitely. But anyways, I'll leave that there.